For having me. I'm Diego García La Huerta, and I'm going to present the work of my thesis titled Modeling of Advanced Electrodeless Plasma Thrusters, which has been done under the supervision of Mario Merino and Eduardo Aedo in the framework of the Zarathustra project. So first, a little bit the contents. I'll go briefly about the motivation of my work, which is electrodeless plasma thrusters, although my colleagues have talked about them already. Then I go about the goals and the timeline I followed during my thesis. I'll talk a little bit about the code and the models that I've used, and then I'll go briefly through some results. So first, the motivation. As my colleague said already, especially Davide, electrodeless plasma thrusters are a type of electric propulsion devices, but that work by energizing a plasma via electromagnetic waves and accelerating them in so-called magnetic nozzle. They have the advantage against other devices such as Hall effect thrusters and grid ion engines. They don't have any plasma-weighted electrodes, and therefore they are less prone to erosion. However, these thrusters are still low performant compared to these other mature technologies. And there are several open questions, as David talked about already. And my thesis was developed to the study of some of these questions, particularly the expansion of plasma in the magnetic nozzle. First, I'll talk about the goals of my thesis. Basically, I started working in a new novel type of thruster called the magnetic arc thruster. And I did run some simulations to study the feasibility and study how the ion beam detached downstream from the thruster and the role of the self-induced magnetic field. And then afterwards, we identified that there was a big interest in the community to study the effect of collisions in EPTs, mainly because they produce the so-called facility effects, and we improved our model to study that. So the first year, I spent it developing a two-fluid code for the simulation of EPTs, and I started doing the first study of the plasma expansion in a magnetic arc. Then the second year, I introduced the self-induced magnetic fields in the magnetic arc, which we thought that would play a big role in the expansion. And I started doing an improved model for the simulation of ionization in cylindrical EPTs. And this third year, I've spent it doing some code extensions, adding another fluid species. So the neutrals, including ion pressure and neutral pressure, etc. So the code that I'm using, that I've developed, is this continuous Galerkin code that discretizes spatially the equations. It's kind of a finite volume, finite element method with some traits of finite volumes that solves our spatial equations in an unstructured mesh. And for time evolution, I use a strong stability-preserving Runge-Kutta time stepping, although I'm mostly interested in steady-state solutions. And I've implemented some different models. First, I used a two-fluid model consisting of inertialess polytropic electrons and cold ions that I used for the magnetic arc. And then I did an extension to a three-fluid model, including energy equation for the ions and the neutrals, and collisions such as ionization and charge exchange. So about the results. First, the first year, I did the first assessment of the expansion of plasma in the so-called magnetic arc in the beta zero limit, which is this case. And we performed a study of the effect of the self-induced magnetic field on the device, on the thrust. Here on the right side, you can see here is a growing beta parameter, which measures the influence of the self-induced magnetic field. And as you can see, as you increase the self-induced magnetic field, the magnetic streamlines open up, allowing for an electron beam to separate from the source, and therefore neutralizing the ion beam downstream. This enhances thrust in this case of the magnetic arc, because here we can see that for the beta zero limit, we see a decrease in thrust in the far plume. But as we increase the self-induced magnetic field, we see that the thrust kind of has a plateau at infinity. The second part, I include a very simple model to take into account the effect of ionization in the far plume. We saw that this late ionization basically has two main effects. It increases thrust because we have a higher mass of plasma that is being subject to the acceleration by the electric field. However, it reduces the ion velocity downstream, of course, because we are creating slow ions as we ionize downstream instead of in the source. And lastly, I included the model for the three-fluid model to take into account imperfect ionization in the source. And these collisions with neutrals, the neutrals that come from the source, have several effects. Here we can see the potential, the electric potential measured along these magenta arcs here that are depicted here for radius 4, which is the inner line, and radius 8, which is the outer line. And what we can see is that with increasing collision, that would be from black to the green line, increasing collisionality, increasing the neutral density, reduces the radial confinement, therefore increasing the divergence of the plume and reducing the divergence efficiency. However, the fluid velocity of the ions is decreased. We can see here the maximum velocity of the ions downstream at set equal to 15. But it increases the magnetic thrust. However, even though we increase the magnetic thrust, this is detrimental to the total efficiency of the magnetic nozzle as we are accelerating those new ions downstream instead of from the source. We can see here that the magnetic thrust increases with lower utilization efficiency, but however the nozzle efficiency decreases. We have also seen, we include a very simple model to take into account the electric, the losses due to ionization collisions in the electrons, and we have seen that the losses are almost negligible in the range that we have used. This is because the electron mean free path in this case is very long, and therefore the energy losses on the electrons are very, very low. So this is the main outcomes of my thesis. We published the first paper on the plasma acceleration in a magnetic arc last year. We are preparing now a second paper on the effect of imperfect utilization in the source and of facility effects of the background pressure effect on the expansion. And I participated in 3 conferences. So I think that's it on my part. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.